Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Gillian Berry, and today we have an awesome guest in store for you guys. Isn't she gorgeous? We have Rosie Heals, otherwise known as Kelsey. She's amazing and she's had a huge transformation on the raw living foods diet. She was facing chronic health problems, and the raw living foods literally fixed all of her problems. I believe all of her problems, but we'll find out in a second. And she's just awesome. So let's hear her story. Let's get right into it. How's it going, Kelsey?
It's good, Gillian. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I love you and love your channel. So very grateful. Thank you
Thank
for that
you.
awesome.
Thank you. I love you. I think you're super cool. Your Instagram is just super high vibe and beautiful. You're beautiful. So are your foods. And I have to compliment before we start your beautiful dress or shirt. I love it. I think it's gorgeous.
Thank you so much. It's a vintage find locally. I appreciate
Awesome. So let's get right into it. You were suffering from what I've seen, what I've read online and everything through your posts with a lot of chronic health problems. And then about 4 years ago, I believe you turned to the raw living foods. I would love to know what led you to the raw living foods, sort of your story, and then what benefits you experienced.
Yeah. So it kind of feels like the origin of, chronic illness is what led me to raw foods eventually. And I always have this kind of D-Day of when everything started because I had these two really severe um, dysautonomia type episodes that set me on a track of having chronic illness for 3 years after that. But really, like when I look back before I was dealing with rashes, before any of this kind of like huge nervous system thing happened, I was dealing with fatigue for a long time and trying to find answers and seeing doctors. And so it's funny when you look back in hindsight, you can see like the breadcrumbs of chronic illness kind of manifesting a lot earlier. But I uh, I had a few really severe episodes of feeling like I was going to pass out, and they were like 2 months apart from each other. But this was something wildly different than I'd ever experienced in my life. I've never had anything like that happen. And part of me, like, what it's hard to explain exactly what came over me in those moments, but it was like total disorientation, total dread, kind of feeling like I might die, being really terrified. And so that happened. They told me I had chronic sinus infections. They thought it was a vestibular issue. I took a bunch of antibiotics and a bunch of steroids and took Sudafed every day for like months. And then I had another one of those episodes. And after that second time, it really kind of my nervous system just never got back to balance. I never really felt normal again after that. And
Wow.
so after that kind of tipping point, I was having really inappropriate reactions to food and just intolerances to everything suddenly, intolerance to a lot of environmental things, intolerance to, stress. And so in the end, I spent 3 years in doctor's offices and NDs and specialists. And I kind of acquired the labels of mast cell activation syndrome and histamine intolerance. I had dysautonomia symptoms, which were like POTS like, I think, but I never got the tilt table test to really define that as a diagnosis. But I know that I had those issues and chronic fatigue and really like a lot of gut dysfunction. So a number of things kind of stacked up. I don't feel like at the time I got enough answers. There were like some other potential things going on. But when I found raw foods, I just sort of pushed all that to the wayside. It just didn't matter anymore because of how quickly it made me feel better. So that's what led me to raw foods. And I feel like it was a little bit of a painstaking 3 year journey to finding it because I was really trying to find what would cure me or heal me.
And it can be so frustrating trying to figure it out. I remember back in the day when I was like, after my first daughter was born almost 10 years ago, trying all these different things, candida diet, this, and it can be expensive. You load your fridge up with one type of diet one week, and then 24 hours later, you're like, this isn't going to work. I got to try something else. It's like, it can be crazy. And I'm wondering, so how quickly did you see results when you went raw?
It was really fast. I had been sort of doing a slow transition accidentally. It was really kind of divine, like the timing of when raw foods came in, because I'd been going more and more plant-based. I had made changes because of like the reactions that we had pinpointed to certain foods. So I eliminated dairy, So I actually found medical medium before raw foods and the raw food community, kind of like probably a year and a half before. So he really kind of bashed my fruit fear in the beginning. This idea that fruit could be meals and fruit could be healing and high volume. I just never thought of that. And I really wasn't eating fruit like that, like my whole life, you know? So that set the stage. And then I found raw foods. And now I'm forgetting your exact question.
How quick you saw the results. And you said pretty quick.
So yeah, so I like to set that stage because I think there's a little bit of background there for why I took to this so quickly. But yeah, right when I turned to all fruit, and it was like all fruit for 3 months, I'd say my most dramatic symptoms went away within that first 3 months. And I'm talking about like the visual disturbances that I had. I walked around feeling very not right with like my eyesight and my peripheral vision, and just
Scary.
yeah, just feeling like I was going to pass out all the time. But I got really used to it at that point and really pushed myself through those symptoms, which wasn't a good thing. But yeah, I always told myself, and I always told my partner, when I find something that kind of moves the needle on that thing that sort of bothered me the most, then I'll know, you know, and it happened on the fruit.
Wow. And do you remember like what exactly you were eating when like you really started noticing these huge improvements?
Yeah, so I it wasn't too fancy. I was doing a lot of wild blueberry smoothies. So I would do like apple juice and water and wild blueberries and bananas, and I was just kind of like having a lot of those. I was eating apples and dried figs and dried dates and mango, watermelon, you know, of course the juicy, rich, hydrating foods. So that was kind of like the mainstay, just a lot of smoothies, a lot of juices. And then I would, you know, have the fruit, veggies, and greens at night often. So that's kind of what the 3 months looked like was
Hmm.
my fruit, some grounding meals at night. Sometimes I would have all fruit days. I did a lot of, you know, like orange juices and fruit juices, which were very high vibrational. And in the end, maybe not as good for my teeth. And maybe we can talk about that later. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was incredible. Just, I think I knew right away too, getting that glucose in my body. It was just, it felt so dramatic immediately. And the hope that ushered in, like the energy, I couldn't see anything else. Like a lot of people ask about detox. And at that time, I couldn't see anything else other than the energy and the way things were shifting.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can and do heal on the fruit and the fruit sugar. And, Sarah Erica, who I interviewed, I don't know if you saw it, but she did a 1 year juice fast because she was really, really ill, like in a wheelchair. And she drank mostly only fruit juice for like a year. And a lot of people would probably think like that's nuts, right? But she totally healed in her situation at work. She was running a marathon at the end of the juice cleanse from like a wheelchair. So like it was crazy. And I'm wondering, how does what you were eating then compare to now? Like, what's an example of what you would eat in a day now? And how have things evolved for you over the years? And have you noticed like you need changes here and there? And are you still thriving?
Hmm. Yeah, so in the first 2 years, I'd say I really stuck to fruit as a mainstay. And over the last 2 years, so kind of like split in half, I'd say, I became a lot more aware of bringing in more greens and bringing in more micronutrients because I think that there is the potential for mineral depletion over time. I just don't know that all the fruits are really what they're supposed to be anymore. And I think, you know, some cases you can get really good fruit if you're getting tropical fruit or locally grown fruit with people who pay attention to the soil. That is the pinnacle, you know, but it's not often that we're getting that. And so for whatever reason, it's not like I was feeling bad, but the teeth stuff started to happen for me. So I was like, I'm going to do a lot more green juices. I'm going to try to do a little more veggie focused. So I've been kind of on like a 50-50 track until recently, until this summer, because I've just like dove back into fruit, of course.
Hmm.
But for me, it feels like this kind of balance and dance of seasonal changes and flexibility. I think when you're doing this for life, which is what like hit me very quickly, that I feel like this is for life and this is my truth, you know? I think it just makes sense to kind of play around with things and tinker.
Yeah.
I've really liked bringing in more green juices. They feel
Nice.
stunning. I feel like my teeth are in really good shape now.
Good.
Yeah, so that's some of the changes I've made. And then I've done like a little bit of non-raw foods here and there, just mostly for flexibility and grounding.
Yeah. And how did you feel like when you hadn't had cooked food in a long time and then you tried some? How did you feel?
Yeah, it's a grounder. It'll put you right into the ground for me.
Yeah.
And but there's some part of me that kind of needed that in the last year, like had a little bit of an emotional, tumultuous year. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of experiment with that here and there. My partner and I are ethical vegans. We love going out to restaurants and trying new food and trying new restaurants and supporting that. And so, a little bit here and there for me was like just something I wanted to do and open myself up to a little bit more. But it definitely it makes a big difference. I can have like a little bit of symptomatic creep if I let that go on for too long. And
Hmm.
you do feel a little bit more dull and a little bit more numb. And it's very apparent.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's crazy. And I'm wondering with the teeth, like, were you consuming dates too? I know for me, that's the only time I seem to get to sensitivity. Same with a lot of people I interview. So do you think it was only the juicing or were there dates involved here?
Rotates involved here.
Yeah.
Definitely dates involved, a lot of dried fruit, and I'm gonna have dogs barking
Oh, it's
potentially.
okay. We love
Uh,
dogs. It's okay.
so, well, I saw a dentist after 6 years, like about a year ago. Actually, just celebrated a year having gone to the dentist, and my teeth are in really great shape now. But I did have some cavities, and I had never had any cavities in my life, just a few, like few little problem areas. And he even pointed out, like this is very, very along the gum line, very reminiscent of just too much fruit sugar along the gums.
Wow.
It was really nice to hear because I don't think that this diet's a problem at all for teeth, but I think that we can get into habits that don't facilitate good oral health. And I was drinking a lot of juices throughout the day, and the frequency of that is really key too. And then I wasn't taking care of my teeth like I do now. Like I was not as mindful to floss and swish and brush as often as I do. So yeah, I was eating a lot of dates at night to kind of like ground, and dried figs. And again, I just wasn't taking care of my teeth after consuming them. So I do think it was a big combo of
Yeah.
too much fruit juice just being sipped on without taking care of the teeth and the dried fruit. And so that stuff has totally cleared up, and I've gotten some work done. I think like I would really advocate for people to go to the dentist and check in on stuff because you don't want that to go down too far and then you have to take all these
Yeah.
medications for like a surgery. If your dogma goes that far, then it's not what you wanted in the first place.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And I'm wondering, what do you think, like, wait, rewind 4 years. What do you think caused all the health problems you had in the first place?
It's a big question. I think there's so many things. I had some childhood trauma, so I know that that's a really, really big deal. If people are familiar with the work of, is it Gabermate? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. A lot of people do work around that childhood trauma and chronic illness. It's very interesting. So I think even going back to like my birth story, I don't know if you've looked at this or anyone else has looked at this, but I had a really traumatic birth story as well. I had to be life flighted away from my mother after like an emergency C-section. And so, not only not getting like everything that was needed from that birth, but the stress of that, I've just read a lot about how impactful that can be in your adulthood. So those are like the very, very foundational things from a long time ago. But I grew up eating a super crappy diet because that's just standard and that was kind of normal. A lot of fast food for a lot of years. I did have like issues with food restriction and binging and purging for like a couple years of my life, which was really difficult. And I think just physically very difficult on the body, but mentally very stressful, of course, too. And a lot of other things like I had viruses and infections my whole life. I took antibiotics my whole life, a lot of medical intervention, and just like general trauma as well. So all those things combined, I think were like the perfect storm for this to kind of happen. And I think,
Yeah.
well, when you take an inventory, you'll find that it's so many different things and not just one.
And
But
yeah, it's amazing how healing the foods can be. And do you feel like the foods have helped you heal with the traumas too, more so than you would have by now had you continued eating like that? And do you have any like tips for somebody who like is faced right now with trauma from their past or something? They're having a hard time working through it. Have there been books or like tools you've used to like work through that?
yeah, yeah, that's such a good question. I think the foods have been amazing. They really were an impetus for addressing the trauma and having really deep emotional releases, really deep emotional detox. That was such a big theme in the first year, especially on raw food. And it was really hard. And I think you can get into your head and you can feel like you're going crazy when stuff is just coming up and
Hmm.
and it's fascinating to me that it for me it happened in a chronological manner, literally walking backwards through time. So I'm still doing it. And there's still things that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna deal with that like later. Like we need a break sometime. Yeah, I think if you dealt with trauma in your life, the raw foods are going to bring it out of you. So you need to create a safe space for yourself for that. You need to have supportive people around you for that. I'm really lucky to have had a supportive partner around those times. And you have to cry. You just
Yeah.
have to cry. You have to let it all out. Let it all out. It'll come out more and more. And then like there's this deep, deep relief afterward. And
Yeah.
version of yourself. So I just think taking that time, making it really sacred. But yeah, tools like really soothing books and meditations have been amazing. I really liked The Power of Now because of the principle of just knowing that like you're not your mind. So even though we need to like feel and release these things when you're having these thoughts come up, you don't always have to identify with them. You don't always have to think this is a representation of you. And that's really helpful. That was revolutionary for me.
That's an amazing book.
Yeah, it's amazing. And Louise Hay, she's got like great affirmation stuff. Yeah, and I have a little book of hers that I pop open and it's just very nurturing, very soothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just guided meditations. There's so many amazing guided meditations out there for trauma. I really like hypnosis ones as well. So I think just kind of rewiring your brain around post-trauma patterns is very
Hmm. And I feel like on the raw living foods, you're just guided to like these healing methods and like more positive things and more positive content, just like overall more positive life. I know it's not all like peaches and rainbows. Like you still have to face like traumas in life. They don't just vanish because you go raw. But also, like, I feel like you don't run away to things and you have to face them more deeply. Maybe that's better because then you can work through them, but you don't like typically if you're raw, you don't usually
mm-hmm,
drink and stuff.
mm-hmm.
Like I don't drink alcohol anymore. And I know for you, I think you used to drink, right? And going raw, has it totally like kicked the cravings for that? And do you feel like you have a happier life now that you don't drink?
Yeah, yeah. I've heard your story on that, and I totally identify with you to a T. I come from a line of alcoholics. And so I was a big social drinker. I never thought I had a problem, but in hindsight, I think I did. And, there were years where like I'd try to maybe drink less but I don't think I ever thought that alcohol wouldn't be in my life. But when I did transition to raw foods, it was like honestly like that for me. I struggled in the years I was sick with giving up alcohol because I had to. It was making me really sick, and the histamine stuff is really bad with alcohol.
Wow.
One really big red flag was just like I couldn't tolerate that stuff anymore. But I would still want it and I would feel FOMO and it was hard. So I'd have a beer every once in a while or I'd go out every once in a while. It just totally ruined me. But I
Hmm.
didn't like detach from it. And then the raw foods just made it happen. And medical medium talks about this kind of glucose component being an issue with addiction. And for me, that
Mm.
resonates deeply. Like once I brought in a bunch of fruit, I met my glucose needs, and it's like some of this
Wow.
stuff just raveled away. And I know that that's not always the case for people. It's not always going to be that easy, but it was magical.
Yeah, amazing. And did you drink coffee before? And if you did, was it easy to get off it or like any tips for people? I know a lot of my viewers, like they love their coffee. It is hard. I used to love it too. It's hard to get off of.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I wasn't like a huge coffee drinker though, but I did drink it probably like a half a cup to a cup a day. My partner and I were really into going to coffee shops and getting like a latte. So I never felt like a super habitual, but I guess over time it did kind of become that way. But I think transitioning to like a lower caffeine drink and then transitioning to herbals and then, finding like a ritualistic habit in the morning that is equally nice and fulfilling to you.
Mm,
I'm, I don't think it's bad to have warm drinks on this lifestyle. I've always kind of allowed that with teas and that sort of thing. I mean, there's been times where I've not had it, but
hmm.
it's good to just kind of like nurture yourself through the process a little bit. And then I do think once you get onto raw foods, you really don't crave that as much. And I've seen a lot of people say that it becomes unappealing at some point. I think there's some great herbs too. Like ginseng is amazing, rhodiola is amazing. So you can tinker around with these sort of like really supportive, energetic herbs that are, I think, good for the adrenal system too.
Hmm.
And that can be helpful. And I have an herbal coffee recipe on my YouTube if anyone wants to check.
Amazing. I'll link that below for sure. I know
Yeah,
when I used to consume like coffee and alcohol or certain foods, it used to affect my eyes. Like they would hurt more when I'd wake up or like feel more dry or just like I noticed a difference. So, it was interesting. I just interviewed an iridologist specialist before you today. It was really cool. And I'm wondering, have your eyes changed at all? Have you noticed a change in the color or like your vision or clarity or like just how they feel more moist, not dry, any of those changes since being raw?
yeah, big changes in the eyes. That was such a big deal for me, especially in the beginning. It was like the number one indicator that I was coming alive again, honestly. And there are pictures from when I was having really bad symptoms and flares. And that was really noticeable to me long before I found raw foods. I was like, my eyes look dead. Like I look dead. There's not
Wow.
much color there and just really heavy. And yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I think physically I noticed on the raw foods was just like such a brightening.
Yeah, they're so bright and blue and beautiful. Like that's what I notice whenever I go on your Instagram, your big, bright blue, like healthy looking eyes. You look so healthy.
Thank you. Thank you. And I noticed too, like I can see an acute difference if I bring in unoptimal foods or some cooked food. It's like that gets a little bit
Yeah.
dim, it's almost like immediate.
It's crazy. Our eyes just say so much. It's crazy. It's
Yeah. I had an
just
iridologist reading.
I've never had one. Now after doing the last interview I did, I really want to have one. Have you had one done before?
I haven't, but I also really want to do that.
Yeah.
Will re-inspire me to kind of dig a bit deeper because I do feel like there's deeper layers.
Hmm.
That's always the case.
And have you ever done like any deep cleanses over the years, like any juice cleanses or mono fruit cleanses? And how have they like sort of changed your life or what did you experience with that?
Yeah, really similar to you. I like smile every time I hear you say it. I did the 21 days of melons
Yeah.
and 20 grapes. And I wonder if we did it around the same time. I'm not sure.
Wow. Yeah. I did it. I think it was about a year ago or yeah, I think I forget. I think about like 12 to 14 months ago, maybe.
Okay. Mine was, I can't keep track whether or not it was 2 years ago at this point or three. It may have been three.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, really dramatic, like just incredible, right? I mean, the best high I think I've ever experienced was just on watermelons and just beautiful what happens with the skin and the mind and the body and connection with nature. Like that's always been the most potent thing for me is just life around you comes alive so loudly and connects with you so loudly is just like grabs you in and it's magnetizing. It's amazing the connection that you build
Mhm.
in nature and life when you're on the fruit.
Mhm. 100%. And I know, like you said, you've had trauma and stuff like that, but do you feel like being raw, like, do you feel overall a lot happier versus before?
Yeah, so much happier. Yeah, definitely. It's funny, I was like a really emo woman, teen, like in my I just I was definitely sad a lot, you know, and I don't think I realized that until this lifestyle.
Me too,
Um,
yeah.
sad music, yeah. I was very, I think, depressive at times, and I never would have said that. A lot of highs and lows, you know, like really high highs and then really low lows. And it just life feels much more balanced now, much more high highs, like in the natural sense that doesn't come from stimulation or even like social stimulation or career moves or whatever, you know, it's just like those highs come much more naturally with the kind of mundane, like slow pieces of life, which is really beautiful.
Mhm. And has this changed, like, your career path at all, the raw living foods?
Yeah, it absolutely has. Very recently, up until the last year, I worked like that career path and did, you know, I studied journalism and media and TV production, and I was always really driven around that. And I worked in TV news for a little while, and that's how I met my partner
Wow.
times. But an interesting chapter. Yeah. And then did a lot of stuff like with animals and media over the years and video. But yeah, so I ended up quitting my job and I'm working on a really kind of immersive coaching program for women that
Wow.
vibrance. And it does feel like kind of like my life's calling at this point. So that was a big, it was a big shift, big recent shift. But yeah, I mean that's a massive change.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
I'll link all your stuff below too for everybody who wants to check out your work and, like, your social media and everything. And I'm wondering, I don't think we said everything. We talked about what you experienced for, like, healing, but what are maybe sort of a list of all the benefits you experienced when you first went raw, if you remember? I'm sure you
Yeah.
probably do.
One thing that comes to me, it's going to be like ping pongy here, but just awareness, like the ability to observe, you know, life. And I quickly saw that like I needed to address being a people pleaser my whole life. Boundaries came into play really quickly for me. And these were things that were just totally invisible to me before. And I think chronic illness like started that, but then raw foods blew it up into my face, you know, which was a really big deal. Just that energetic hygiene came into play. And I had never considered that before and never really been aware of it. I just, in general, like consciousness feels like it was raised high. I made the ethical connection with the animals, and that is like one of the most amazing times of my life and mine and my partner's life was like really making that deep connection. And I don't think it would have happened without raw foods,
Mhm.
interestingly. Like we had around that message before and we'd been vegetarian for a year before, but it just didn't quite stick. It didn't go deep enough. And I don't know, like eliminating animal products for both of us was what allowed us to take that invitation to look at that, you know, really seriously. It was really special and I'm really grateful for that. And just of course the energy, like the emotion, like the range of true emotion for life. Hard to explain that, you know, but like you just appreciate everything. You appreciate even the bad things.
Mhm.
And physical healing, of course. You know, like so dramatic. I mean, I really having that confidence that you can heal your body is really invaluable with chronic illness, but it becomes invaluable with everything. Like new things are going to happen, you know, and having that as a tool is just like, it's such a grounding thing. It's such a reassuring thing to have that in life. That's a big one for me.
Mhm. And in the 4 years, like, looking back, Do you feel like there's anything you do differently with regards to the lifestyle? Like if you were starting now, maybe like some things you learned or mistakes you made for like someone watching who might be like thinking about starting?
Yeah, yeah, definitely think there's mistakes I made, and they're part of kind of like those common mistakes, that people make, like not eating enough probably in the beginning. It's hard for me to like remember exactly how much and what I was eating, and I don't think it was too drastic, but it just takes time to learn that volume difference and take it on like gut wise. So that's a big one, like always. And in the beginning, I don't think I was eating quite enough. The teeth thing was a big one. Like just take care of your teeth from the beginning, and don't think that that's like an invincible piece of this. Because
Hmm.
not. I also think with people with chronic illness, it can become kind of complicated when you're detoxing and these things kind of are coming up and settling in your mouth, like films, like biofilms breaking down. And, you know, yeah, I can just literally have like felt that over the years. And at the time, I would have been kind of taking care of my teeth a lot better then. And a number one for me that I don't know if too many people talk about, is kind of controversial because people love their enemas. But
Hmm.
yeah, I did a series of like I want to say 5 to 7 enemas about a year ago. I did some coffee and some water. I think maybe like a lemon. And it was just big hyped then. It's always hyped. Like there's periods, but the coffee enemas, I've always been intrigued by them. But for whatever reason, I just like it was never in my sphere in the beginning. I wasn't interested and I didn't feel like I needed that. But learning more about them and seeing what people said about them, I was like really intrigued. So I did some. And I think I felt that kind of immediate thing of purging one time in particular. Like I had energy all night long. It almost felt unnatural and artificial in a way, but I loved it for a minute. And
Yeah.
and then like reality settled in and I really didn't eliminate much. And it really didn't feel like it did much. And then in the year after that, which is like right now, my gut totally did change. I
Wow.
feel like I wiped some good stuff out there.
Wow. Interesting.
My digestion changed a bit. And so it's still good, but it's taken like some recovery time, amazingly.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was just pretty shocked. And some people talk about this, like Lauren Lockman talks about this, and I really love him. And
I'm
you know,
interviewing him right after you. Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. No, I did a bunch of enemas a couple years ago. I forget when it was. It was at least a couple years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. And I did some coffee enemas and then I started releasing parasites and then I'd feel so good after I released them. And I was like, whoa. And I got like really addicted to doing these enemas. I was doing like, this was before I started my YouTube channel. I was doing a lot of them. And then I'd be like, is this release? Like, am I feeling good because of the coffee or because of the release? Like, I don't know. And I did way too many. Like, I should not have done that many, but at the same time, it probably did cleanse out a lot and it did get out a lot of parasites, which I had no idea I had. But I have a totally different view on them now. Even colonics, I was doing a lot of colonics like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago too, like a lot. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, I think it really disrupts the gut microbiome and our bacteria. And I mean, so if I do a colonic now, it's like barely ever, just if like I ate way too much food the night before, gourmet raw or something. And I'm like, let me go for one. But yeah, I think people got to be careful with those now. Maybe they're good at Gerson Institute if people are healing, like, and have major problems, right?
Yeah, I think there's a time and place. I think in the beginning it might be a lot different, but I'd
Yeah.
spent years like really building this very special new microbiome and it wasn't needed. And so yeah, I think people just should be really, really cautious with that. Yeah, it really shifted things. But
Yeah. And I think you can like cleanse your body without having to do any of that. Like without even having to do a cleanse. Like when I first went raw, I was just eating food, no cleansing involved, no juice cleanse, no type of cleanse, no enemas, and I healed everything and I was feeling amazing like right away. So I don't think people have to like cleanse to heal.
yeah, that's beautiful. That was my story too. I should mention that. Like I really didn't cleanse until later, much
Me
later.
too. Yeah.
Year. Yeah.
And if
Awesome.
you had to like think of say like one word to describe this lifestyle, what would it be?
Hard.
I
Uh,
know.
really just say magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
all that synchronicity. Like, you know, your eyes and ears just become really open to synchronicity. And I've always been big on that, feeling that synchronicity in life. And it's just so out of this world when you turn to raw. And so magical, I feel like covers a lot of levels, you know. So that would be the word.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, over the years, have you supplemented at all? Do you believe in supplements?
Yeah, I do believe in supplements. I I used a lot of supplements when I was sick, so I kind of got into the territory of like using them haphazardly and not as intentionally anymore, 'cause just trying to heal, you know, like throwing things at me, seeing what would work. And when I found raw, I kind of took a little hiatus from supplements. I mean, I always have had certain herbs in the rotation, but it was like
Mhm.
minimal for the first couple years. And now I've brought a lot more supplementation back. I mean, I've never been without B12. I've always supplemented that here and there, doing it more diligently now. I did go without D for like maybe a year or so, and that was probably a bad idea because I've historically had low D. Like my levels before raw, I had low B12. I was consuming, you know, high quality animal products and all this stuff,
Mhm.
low iron. And so yeah, I feel like supplementation is really important and that you should be smart about it, you know, and not overdo it, but find the balance. So yeah,
Mhm. I think so too. Well, this has been so awesome. I've loved having you on, loved talking to you. And I'm wondering, to end off, is there anything that comes to mind maybe for somebody out there who might be struggling with some health problems right now, maybe some chronic fatigue or chronic problems, skin problems, and they're not eating raw or they don't know where to start? Anything to maybe encourage them that there is a light at the end of the tunnel?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it as a baseline, you have to have that hope. And I think it's easy for that hope to go away, but you kind of have to experience this to get like that deep, deep, deep hope because of this kind of immediate magic. And not, I know not everyone may feel that in the beginning, but I think in terms of like practical transition, it's really important to move to like a whole foods, plant-based approach and then bring in more fruit meals like in the morning and then slowly eat more and more raw. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing what people manage to heal on this lifestyle and it doesn't
Yeah.
really come from or what their background is, you know, it's incredible. So I would just really keep digging into those stories of people and gain that self-trust within yourself. I know that during chronic illness, self-trust and self-confidence just gets stripped away when you're
Mhm.
really failing you. So you really have to work that back up. But I just think that along with having like a broad education with these great health educators that are out there, you have to like tune in to yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to find yourself again and find the hope.
Well said. Beautiful. And where can everybody find you?
Rosie Heals at Instagram. And then I've been doing some YouTube stuff, like just some longer form recipes and nature type stuff on YouTube. So I'll keep doing that. And yeah, if anyone wants to message anytime about anything or coaching or whatever, I'm always in the DMs. So
Awesome. Amazing. I think you're beautiful. And to the viewers, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it added some value to your day. If it did, give it a big thumbs up right now. And make sure you guys subscribe if you don't already. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.